So today is Mother's Day, and I thank you that you are here worshiping with us on Mother's Day. And I acknowledge the mothers here, past and present. And I am so grateful for the mother that I had who may not be with me physically, but has certainly shaped me, and who I'm sure, like Jesus's mother, was many times frustrated with me, but loved me anyway. So I think of us now, those of us who had wonderful mothers, and I also think of us who may not have had such wonderful mothers. And I'm thankful that whether we knew it or not, that we also all had a Father in heaven who watched over us. So it is my privilege, my pleasure to preach today for Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And you may have looked at the sermon title and wondered why I chose "I've Got a Fire Shut Up in My Bones." To be honest with you, I wondered about that text too. It wasn't one I chose. It chose me. And I honestly couldn't figure out why this text was choosing me. So I had to look at it closely and figure out why it was calling to me. So, as Mariel read today, our text is Jeremiah 20, verses 7 to 9. Who was Jeremiah? He was one of the major prophets of the Hebrew Bible. He was named the weeping prophet. He was a prophet who didn't get the privilege of bringing good news, of encouraging people out of captivity. Instead, his message was more, "You've done wrong, people, and you've been unfaithful to God, and you will pay for that by being exiled." Really not the most joyful, encouraging message, and really not somebody that felt very welcome at all. So let's look again at those verses. There are a lot of different translations for verse 7. Some talk about God as being persuaded by God, enticed by God, tricked by God, fooled by God. Not the things that most of us are used to hearing. Really a little bit different. But these are very serious words. Did he actually mean these literally? Or did he mean something else? So let's take another look at this text. Let's listen to a paraphrase, The Message by Eugene Peterson, a more contemporary translation. Jeremiah 20, verses 7 to 10. And this version is The Message. You pushed me into this, God, and I let you do it. You were too much for me. And now I'm a public joke. They all poke fun at me. Every time I open my mouth, I'm shouting murder or rape. And all I get from my God warnings are insults and contempt. But if I say, forget it, no more God messages from me, the words are a fire in my belly, a burning in my bones. I'm worn out trying to hold it in. I can't do it any longer. Then I hear whispering behind my back. There goes old danger everywhere. Shut her up. Report her. Old friends watch, hoping I'll fall flat on my face. One misstep and we'll have her. We'll get rid of her for good. Now you're thinking to yourself, what an odd choice for Asian American Pacific Islander Month. Why this text from Jeremiah? Why? Because we're here in Oakland in 2021, After more than a year of sheltering in place, a year of church on Zoom, shortages of toilet paper, Clorox wipes, and Lysol spray, hand sanitizer, distance learning in school, hybrid learning, people laid off from jobs, working from home, businesses closing, stimulus payments, essential workers, PPE, masks, social distancing, isolation, loneliness, arguments about masks, blame for the virus and where it started, politicizing of healthcare, vaccine trials, pandemics, twin pandemics of COVID-19 and racism, the Chinese virus and Kung flu. How many new words and ideas did we see this year? And how many terrible words did we hear? Words about not enough PPE for our frontline healthcare workers, increasing rates of positive COVID-19 test results, rising death counts, our hardest hit, older age groups, things out of control. But remember, I said twin pandemics. Let's not forget racism. Guessing where the virus came from, and I repeat, guessing where the virus came from, we have the bat virus, those bat-eating people. Finding someone to blame, needing someone to blame, we suddenly had the China virus, the Chinese virus, the Kung flu. Words from the leader of our country, words from the leader of our country. Because in the past year, our hardest battle has not been against COVID-19. Yes, my friends, the hardest battle has been in our hearts. The biggest battle has been the one for our hearts. Not, can you find enough toilet paper or Lysol spray? Not, will you wear a mask or not? The battle has been for our need to find someone to blame for the hardships, the need to blame others for the challenges we have faced as a country, as individuals, room for the racism that may always have been lying there waiting, sometimes hidden and sometimes not hidden. Racism that has existed in this country for many years that maybe we thought was at least slowed down by the civil rights movement in the 1960s, but has still been lingering beneath the surface, that has been welcomed back, that has been made visible again by words like the Kung flu and the Chinese virus. So I even asked myself when I was preparing for this sermon for Asian American Pacific Islander Month, what text was calling to me? And when this text popped up, why? Why Jeremiah? Why did he say he had a fire shut up in his bones? And why does this speak to me? What is God saying to me and to us? What is the fire that is shut up in my bones? I don't know exactly how Jeremiah heard God's call to him or what he thought God was calling him to do. But I can tell you that my call to seminary was partly to answer a question that I had. And it's been about 20 years now. What does it mean to be Asian American and Christian? What does it mean to be Chinese and Christian? And what does that look like for me? What does that do? How does that shape that call in my life? And I went to seminary thinking that I would learn more about the Bible, more about what it means to be a servant leader in church. I learned about pastoral care, working with seniors and youth, Christian ed, the normal things. And yet, like Jeremiah, I find myself in hard times with a difficult message. We are living in a time of blaming, of economic losses and personal losses. We're living in a time of uncertainty, and we have people who want to see us blaming each other. We have people who don't want us to work with each other to find the best in ourselves and in one another. You know, it may sound strange, but it's helpful to have Chinese people blamed for the coronavirus, for COVID-19. It's useful to blame China and the Chinese. So maybe some people, maybe it's people in our government, maybe it's people who profit by this discord, people who don't want to take responsibility for being so poorly prepared for the pandemic, people who have maybe gutted the CDC, gutted other government services, and then found themselves unable to respond quickly. It's helpful to encourage the active dislike of Asians, raising them up as the model minority, saying that if you only worked hard, study hard, you would be successful too. And the unsaid, unspoken, if you aren't successful, well, then maybe that's just your fault, because look at them. They made it. Why aren't you succeeding? And isn't that just another distraction, just another misdirection? Not unlike magicians who, in their acts, have you looking one way, while in the other direction, they're doing the sleight of hand, doing their trick. Because when we start pointing fingers, blaming, we get distracted from the uneven education systems, the well-funded schools with the beautiful campuses and the extras like music and arts programs, which didn't always used to be extras, versus the schools that barely have enough textbooks or Chromebooks, where parents struggle to get internet services for those Chromebooks. Yes, rather than look at our inequities, it's easy for us to blame the Chinese and China for the virus, for our loss of jobs, for our loss of hope. But we don't look at Walmart, who manufactures overseas, who pushes out the local mom and pop stores with the low prices we've come to love so much, who pays those low wages, wages so low where their employees qualify for food stamps. No, we learn to blame the Chinese for undercutting costs. It's not that long ago that we had a president that issued orders for the rounding up of over 120,000 Japanese and Japanese Americans because they were a possible threat to America and Americans. Yet 2/3 of those people incarcerated in camps on US soil were US citizens. That's right, born here, like I was born in Oakland. Yet people still ask me, where am I from? Oakland. No, where are you really from? So I have a couple of challenges for us today, and they aren't exactly the same challenges for everyone. So if you hear me now, and if you're Asian, I have to ask you to let go of believing we are the model minority. Yes, we studied hard. We worked hard. We've had success. You've had success. I'm glad you've had success. I've had some success in school and work. But it wasn't because we're a model minority. Because even as Asians, We're not all the same. We aren't all great at math. We aren't all doctors. We aren't all engineers. We're different people with different gifts. And some of us struggle in school, don't all get to go to school, aren't all straight A students. Some of us come here wealthy, and some of us come here as refugees and have much to overcome and somehow succeeded in school against all odds. But some of us have ended up in gangs, and some of us have been incarcerated. So don't believe the lie, the fairy tale of Asians as a model minority. That has just been a convenient excuse for society to not have to take responsibility for having equal access to good schools for all, for letting go of that by allowing businesses to take over and allowing charter schools, rather than the government taking responsibility and ensuring that we have free quality education for all children in the United States. We know that we look down in countries where school is not free and people have to pay. Yet, if we don't have high quality public schools for all, are we really that much better? If you hear me and you're not Asian, if you're another person of color, if you're white, please don't believe that Asians are taking away from you, taking your spot in school, taking a job from you, taking a house from you, that Asians are a model minority. Because that is the lie of scarcity. That is the lie of the zero-sum game. That is the lie that in order for me to have something, you can't have anything. It's the lie that there isn't enough for all. We've been misdirected to believe there isn't enough to go around. For me to have enough, you can't have anything. But that is not of God. And if we are people of God, if we believe in God and not just in ourselves, there is enough. There can be enough. Why is it that people can't earn living wages? Why do companies pay what they do? Why do stockholders earn huge profits and workers don't make living wages? And why do investors make all this money? And why are we blaming the Chinese and Chinese Americans? And Asian people, we do not need to be afraid of Black people or African Americans. I know there aren't a lot of Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders at Lakeshore, but I'm just saying this for the record. We don't need to be afraid of people as a whole group. Yes, there have been Asians attacked over the years. Yes, there have been even more people we hear of in the news, anti-Asian violence. It's a real thing. And yes, our friend Mr. Ho was robbed and attacked by an African-American man in Oakland. But the greatest danger is not the individual attack. The greatest danger is the fear, the learned hatred of the other, the dislike and the hatred that someone has continued to build up so that we are set up to be one group against the other group. That is the lie. And that is not of God. A shout out now to the Oakland Youth Chorus, a place where, as a young person, I first had the chance to make my first African-American friends. Friends who continued on to college and to seminary, and even now. Friends who taught me and helped me see that there is violence, not just against Asian people, but against African-American people. People who taught me the importance to stand up for my African-American friends and with Black Lives Matter, taught me that it's just as important for me to be their ally as it is for me to ask them to be my ally. If you know me, you know my friends, you know my family. You know that not all my friends are Asian or white. You know who stood up for me when my mother died. You know who I call family. And yes, like Jeremiah, I have a fire shut up in my bones, a message that is burning in me that won't be quiet, that wants to come out. So I ask you today, let us let go of the lies. Let go of believing that Asian people are the root of the virus, that Asian countries have somehow caused the fall in our economy. Let go of believing that Asians are the model minority, that Asians are all successful in this society, that they're taking away from you, and the lie that if you aren't equally successful, it's your fault, that you aren't smart enough, that you don't work hard enough. Because maybe the truth is, somehow, in the way we have set up society and continued to set things up, that's the reason why people don't have enough. And that's why people struggle in school, because things aren't and haven't been equal for all. Look at how we've arranged our society, how we've continued to set up school, transportation, housing, voting, economics. Look behind the scenes. We live in a divisive society, an intentionally divisive society, not just a diverse society, a divisive society. The question is, can we stop being misdirected, stop being misled, and instead take a look around ourselves? Look around the society and in our hearts and see where the real issues are. Can we let go of our unfaithfulness to God and believing that we were better than others, more deserving? Believing that there wasn't enough to go around, and that, yes, we were somehow right to be racist. We believe the lies of the zero-sum game. We believe that others need to fail for me to succeed. We believe that there's not enough to go around. We believe the lie that we can't afford to pay for decent schools for all children. We believe the lie that not everyone can be paid a living wage. Instead of looking at each other as competitors, as rivals, as even less than human, so we can easily beat and rob and kill one another, sometimes individually, and sometimes in more subtle ways, as a whole group, we treat each other as less than human when we have failures in leadership, like in the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, where saving money became more important than saving lives. We need to look at each other as friends, as family, as brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, grandparents. All of us as children created in God's image. Yes, whether or not we even acknowledge, if we all acknowledge a Christian God. Instead of fighting each other for the scraps, we need to start working together to find solutions together. And that is the fire that has been shut up in my bones. That is where I couldn't be quiet any longer. So will you join me? Will you work with me? Will you find the fire that won't quit? that's in your bones. I believe that is the call, my call. And I hope it's our call. Don't let the fire be shut up in your bones. Amen.